Thank you, Priska. It is so invigorating to be in this room today with all of you. I can't tell you how warm and how uplifted I feel by being here. First of all, to Nancy Keenan, I want to say, take us to the next level. Thank you for being here and for leading NARAL as strongly and proudly as you do. You know, we lost a heroine this weekend when Geraldine Ferraro passed away. And I was a very young woman when she became the nominee for vice president of the Democratic Party. And I was thrilled at the dream being realized then, some 27 years ago. We are still waiting for that dream to be completed. But she was, in fact, the first woman to be nominated for that distinctive role of vice president, the first Italian-American, and I think we all want to reflect on the great life she led on behalf of women and families in this country. There was another Italian-American of great renown who will be arriving here shortly, who I hope we never take for granted. She is our own Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi, the leader of the Democratic caucus. And I must tell you, I'm perpetually in awe of her for her passion, her intellect, her compassion, her toughness, and her resilience. She is a woman's leader, a children's leader, a family's leader, and she's an all-American leader. So when she walks into this room in a few moments, I hope you will all stand and applaud a legend in our own time. Now, I was asked this afternoon to kind of set the stage by telling you in firsthand remarks what happened on the House floor that evening. And I'll give you a little bit of the backstory. I had been at two different events. I was sitting in the National Democratic Club having dinner, watching the debate on the floor. And I was with my chief of staff and says, you know, I really need to get over there. I need to be part of this debate. So I wandered over to the House floor. I sat there for about an hour listening to the vitriol coming from the other side. And I was in the queue to speak. Now, I had intended to speak about the irony that on the one hand, you have Planned Parenthood, who had one employee that might have misspoke, but did not, I might add, commit a crime. On the other hand, you have the likes of Halliburton, with a $6 billion contract a year from the U.S. government, that has admitted that they have illegally bribed foreign countries. And yet they continue to operate with abandon. So I'm sitting on the floor kind of looking up on my iPad information about Halliburton, kind of collecting my thoughts. I'm in the queue to speak, and the person who speaks before me is Congressman Smith from New Jersey, who starts to read from a book about a second trimester abortion. And as he uses the most outrageous language to describe the procedure, I'm standing there saying, you don't know what you're talking about. In fact, no one on the other side of the aisle knows what they're talking about. And at one point, he talked about how in delivering the fetus, they were sawing off the leg. And that did it. It really threw me over the edge. And so I abandoned those earlier comments and spoke from my heart and talked about the loss of a baby at 17 weeks and going through a D&E. And I must tell you that the room did get very quiet. I was told that Chris Smith looked like he was a deer in the headlights during my comments. And I felt for the first time that something was different. I didn't exactly know what. I found out the next morning, because the next morning my phone was ringing off the hook. Thousands and thousands of calls from women and men across this country saying, "Thank you for speaking up for all of us." And that's really the message. It is time for all of us to speak up. Later that day, I had a colleague come to me and say, "Jackie, thank you for doing it. I had an abortion, but I could never talk on the floor." Well, that has to change. We have to be willing to talk about this. This is not the time for wringing of hands. This is not the time to whisper quietly about your concerns. This is not the time to say, "I will work on this tomorrow," or I'll work on this after the kids are grown up, or I'll work on this when I have more time, or I'll work on this when I retire. This, my sisters and brothers, is a call to arms. The attacks are real, and the attacks are effective. Our daughters and our sons do not appreciate what is really at stake. And it is our job to help teach them about what was and what cannot be again. Yes, this is about abortion, but it's also about turning back the clock, of codifying discrimination against women in health care, of making it a pre-existing condition to be a woman. And as you laugh about that, the seriousness of it cannot be lost on us, because healthcare reform was all about changing that. And yet efforts are underway to undermine that even now. It's time for all of us to stop being bystanders. It's time for all of us to unleash the stories that are in our hearts and to tell them and to not be afraid. And it's time for all of us to be heard.